This is called Politicians Are Professional Wrestlers. My name is Brandon Wetherbee, that's Chris Kelly. Let's begin. On Monday, April 21st, 2008, the night before the crucial Pennsylvania primary, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and John McCain were doing last-minute campaigning, and they all took time to film remarks that aired on Monday Night Raw, the flagship program for WWE.
Barack Obama concluded his remarks with, "Do you smell what Barack is cooking?" parodying The Rock. Hillary Clinton compared the election to the King of the Ring tournament, and John McCain threatened to introduce Osama bin Laden to wrestler The Undertaker.
Next time you hear John McCain criticize anyone about policy, just remember that was his idea for dealing with Osama bin Laden. Why did three presidential candidates act like professional wrestlers on a pro wrestling show in the middle of election? Because politicians are professional wrestlers, and the road to the White House goes through Monday Night Raw. Every presidential election, the politics as wrestling analogy is presented, and it's always apt. But no candidate has been more of a professional wrestler, specifically WWE chairman and former wrestler Vince McMahon, than Donald Trump.
So there should be a picture of Donald Trump shaving Vince McMahon's head. So you've probably seen it. You've probably seen it in a bunch of publications this year during the election coverage. What's happening there is the conclusion of the Battle of the Billionaires hair match at WrestleMania in 2007. The Donald and Mr. McMahon didn't actually wrestle. They had representatives do it for them, which means a maybe billionaire hypothetically faced another maybe billionaire via minority surrogates. And the winner was the guys billed as billionaires.
Before we go any further, I'd like to point out a few terms to actually understand what we're going on. Hulk Hogan is the biggest face of all time. You know he's a face because he waves an American flag and he tears his shirt open and people like him even though he's bald and kids are supposed to like that. Next slide, please. That's Ted the Million Dollar Man DiBiase. He's a bad guy. That's known as a heel, okay? So a good guy's a face and a heel is a bad guy. Heels wear things like suits and talk about how much money they have. The whole point in wrestling is to get heat. In order to catch heat, wrestlers and managers cut promos, speeches, and interviews meant to provoke their opponent. Technical wrestling skill and results don't really matter. What matters is storytelling and money. Back to the billionaires.
Okay, it was April 1st, 2007, WrestleMania 23. The Donald was playing the role of face. Mr. McMahon was playing the role of a heel. And the inclusion of guest referee Stone Cold Steve Austin, one of the most popular money-making wrestlers of all time, ensured that the gimmick match would get heat. And it worked. WrestleMania 23 grossed more than $5 million in ticket sales, sold over 1.2 million pay-per-view buys. It's one of the most successful WWE events of all time.
The Donald and Mr. McMahon are kinda, sorta self-made billionaires that have benefited from the passive dismissal of lowbrow culture. And they also play the same character. Trump and McMahon both went into the family business and broke rules that their fathers wouldn't. Fred Trump was content to defraud the government with bad housing loans in Brooklyn and Queens, but Donald wanted to conquer Manhattan. Vince McMahon Sr. controlled wrestling in the Northeast, specifically Washington, D.C., but Vince Jr. wanted to conquer the country.
So the 80s were a great decade for both the Donald and Mr. McMahon. Donald had Trump Plaza, A Healthy Marriage, best-selling books, partial ownership of a football league, and he promoted Mike Tyson fights. Mr. McMahon, on the other hand, created WrestleMania, helped usher in Hulkamania, and licensed everything from pillows to board games.
The two men worked together for the first time in the late 80s. WrestleManias 4 and 5 in 1988 and 1989 were held at Trump Plaza in Atlantic City. The Donald can be seen throughout both events. At WrestleMania 5, Ted the Million Dollar Man DiBiase glad hands with Trump before the match. Remember, he's the bad guy that likes the money. At that same Mania, you could see Marlon Maples sitting in the row behind the Donald, and he was still married to Ivana Trump at the time. At WrestleMania 4, Hulk Hogan dedicated his promo to Trump. At this point, I would like you to introduce Chris Kelly playing the role of Mean Gene Okerlund, and I will be playing the role of professional wrestler Hulk Hogan.
Speaking of the Hulkamaniacs, Hulk Hogan, we have seen them here in Atlantic City, and I know millions of others are watching very intently all around the world.
Yes! But if you look in their eyes, man, have you seen the fear in all those little Hulksters? They realize that when they get Andre the Giant cinched up to the launch position, when I slam through Trump Plaza, brother, from New York down to Tampa, Florida, the fault line is going to break off, and as Andre the Giant falls into the ocean, and my next two opponents fall to the ocean floor, and I pin them, so will Donald Trump and all the Hulkamaniacs. I'd like to break character really quick and just like to say that Hulk Hogan threatened to murder everyone on the Eastern Seaboard. But as Donald Trump hangs under the top top of Trump Plaza with his family under his other arm. As they sink to the bottom of the sea, thank God Donald Trump's a Hulkamaniac. He'll know enough to let go of his materialistic possessions, hang on to the wife and kids, dog pedal his way back to safety. But Donald, if something happens, if you run out of gas and all those little Hulkamaniacs just hang on to the largest back in the world and I'll dog pedal us, backstroke us, all up to safety! Really quick, Andre the Giant is easily a much bigger man than Hulk Hogan, so he clearly has the bigger back. That promo was brought to you by two things. One, cocaine, and number two, steroids. He did dog paddle out of frame, by the way. That's a real thing that happens.
So the early 90s weren't as kind to the Donald and Mr. McMahon. Donald got divorced, remarried, and divorced again. Mr. McMahon was sued for steroid use and lost his biggest star in Hogan to his competitor.
In 1991, at WrestleMania 7, Trump's then mistress Marla Maples played the role of a special guest timekeeper in the main event match between Hulk Hogan and defending WWF champion Sergeant Slaughter. Kaylee, keep on that. Go back to that slide really quick. Thank you. I would like to point out that this is Jeopardy host Alex Trebek at WrestleMania 7. So next time all of you lovely people make fun of me for lowbrow culture, that's Jeopardy host Alex Trebek at WrestleMania. We can go back to Sergeant Slaughter. Thank you so much, Kaylee. Fun fact, Sergeant Slaughter was the heel in this feud. The former G.I. Joe was playing the role of an Iraqi sympathizer, and Iraqi sympathizers get the wrong kind of heat. The late 90s brought wrestling back thanks to characters like Stone Cold Steve Austin, Mankind, and future United States presidential candidate, The Rock. The Attitude Era ushered in the company's biggest ratings and most inappropriate storylines. Mr. McMahon brought in Mike Tyson to guest referee at WrestleMania, and Mr. McMahon also decided to start a football league.
So the 2000s were an interesting decade for both the Donald and Mr. McMahon. The end of the Attitude Era brought WrestleMania 20 back to its original home, Madison Square Garden, in 2004. And at that Mania, the Donald was interviewed by former Minnesota governor and former professional wrestler Jesse Ventura. He was by Jesse the Body when he was a wrestler and Jesse the Mind when he was the governor. And Ventura said it to Trump that it was time for a wrestler to be in the White House. You know, a few years later, Donald had the biggest reality show on television, The Apprentice, and piggybacking on each other's successes, Trump and McMahon teamed up for their Battle of Billionaires with the head show.
The Donald and Mr. McMahon worked together a few times since the spring of 2007. In June of 2009, Trump, in storyline only, bought Monday Night Raw from Mr. McMahon. In real life, no transaction occurred. The WWE and the USA Network apologized for the confusion via press release, because the WWE is a publicly traded company and it's a bad idea to do fake business on a show billed as real. The SEC declined to comment.
Brings us to 2013, where Trump was the celebrity inductee to the WWE Hall of Fame for his contributions to wrestling. That year's meeting was held in New Jersey at the Meadowlands. New Jersey Governor and Trump BFF Chris Christie introduced the show. As of today, though, it's the last time that Trump has been prominently featured on WWE programming.
The 2011 Correspondents' Dinner might be the reason Donald Trump is the Republican nominee for President of the United States. Earlier that year, Trump challenged the birthplace of President Obama. Trump was playing the role of heel. Rather than give credence to absurdity, President Obama made a joke out of the issue and its proponent. His opening remarks confronted the issue of his long-form birth certificate. A few minutes into the speech, Obama targeted Trump directly.
Donald Trump is here tonight. Now, I know that he's taken some flack lately, but no one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, do we fake the moon landing? What really happened to Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac? But all kidding aside, obviously, we all know about your credentials, breadth of experience. For example, no seriously, just recently, in an episode of Celebrity Apprentice, at the steakhouse, the men's cooking team's cooking did not impress the judges from Omaha Steaks. And there was a lot of blame to go around. But you, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was the lack of leadership. And so ultimately, you didn't blame Little John or Meatloaf. You fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up at night. Well handled, sir. Well handled. Say what you will about Mr. Trump. He certainly would bring some change to the White House. Let's see what we've got up there.
The Correspondents' Dinner address by Obama was essentially a promo mocking Trump. Obama was a face, Trump was a heel, and the feud continues 5 years later. When Trump announced his presidential run in 2015 at Trump Plaza, he was mocked. Mocked by every mainstream news outlet and comedy program. He was considered a joke. He said crazy things about Mexicans.
I've made a fortune in this country that we call America, so I know what these type of people do to our economy. They take advantage of our healthcare system, our welfare system. They send all their money back to Mexico and look to people like me to support them. They're lazy. They look to government like it's big brother and say, please give me a handout. It's why people like me that have made our own money have such outrageous taxes. Oh, actually, that wasn't Trump. That's wrestler John Bradshaw Layfield, right before attacking a quote-unquote herd of Mexicans at the Texas-Mexico border. Fun fact, JBL is a real-life Fox Business pundit. Here's what Trump actually said.
The U.S. has become a dumping ground for everybody else's problems. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending the best. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
Yeesh. Trump also said some crazy things about women, like, get on your hands and knees like a dog, okay? I used to have a female dog, and that bitch did everything I told her to do. Once again, that wasn't actually what Trump said. That's Mr. McMahon demeaning probably the greatest female wrestler of all time, Trish Stratus. Here's what he said about women.
You have to treat them like shit!
Can't make this up. So Trump's also said some Islamophobic things. He says that Islam hates us, and the U.S. needs, quote, a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what's going on.
The WWE is just as controversial. In 2004, an Italian-American portrayed an Arab-American named Muhammad Hassan, a wrestler best known for praying in Arabic and claiming to be the victim of prejudice, disrespect, and discrimination by Americans. After one match, he dropped to his knees and raised his arms in prayer as 5-minute cargo pants, black sweaters, and black ski masks attacked his opponent, The Undertaker. Once again, The Undertaker is the man John McCain wanted to introduce to Osama bin Laden. Then they imitated a suicide bomber's funeral. Not great, especially considering the episode aired on the tape delay the same day terrorists suicided bombed London.
That was a bummer. So during this primary campaign, Trump has taken on the candidates one by one, like a heel would take on his opponents. He began with low-energy Jeb Bush.
Jeb is having some kind of breakdown. He's embarrassed. He's an embarrassment to his family. Frankly, he's a stiff. He's not a guy who can be president. He doesn't have what it takes to be president.
Anyone after Carly Fiorina?
Look at that face! Would anyone vote for that? Can you imagine that? The face of our next president?
Then he went after little Marco Rubio.
I think he's a highly overrated person. I call him a lightweight.
And then he took out Ted Cruz.
Lion Ted Cruz just used a picture of Melania from a GQ shoot in his ad. Be careful, Lion Ted, or I will spill the beans on your wife!
Did he ever spill this?
There's no beans have been spilled.
Okay,
but he's definitely more from that.
He did connect Ted Cruz's father to the Kennedy assassination, so there's that. And then he wasn't done with the candidates, he also attacked the Pope.
For a religious leader to question a person's faith is disgraceful. By the way, that's like when Vince McMahon and his son Shane wrestled Shawn Michaels and Michaels' tag team partner God at Backlash, a pay-per-view. God and Shawn Michaels won.
In wrestling, sometimes a heel becomes so popular that he eventually becomes a face. It's called a face turn. And it's what happened to someone like The Rock, who used to get "Die Rocky Die" chants until he became the most popular star that wrestling has ever produced. And as we watch this campaign, we've been expecting a face turn from Donald Trump. Once he secured the nomination, pundits thought he'd have to pivot to compete in the general. But on the day after he became the presumptive nominee, he wished Twitter a happy Cinco de Mayo and said, "I love Hispanics," while eating a taco ball and reading a People magazine profile about his ex-wife, Marla Maples. So obviously Trump has not had a face turn. It's impossible for us to say what will happen in November, but at least in wrestling, heels get their comeuppance, and it's what's best for business. Bad guys don't sell the most merch, and at least until now, they haven't won elections. So while it's easy to dismiss low culture, it'd be a mistake. Nothing in the Republican race for the presidential nomination was shocking if you paid attention to low culture.
The biggest court case of 2016 revolved around professional wrestler Hulk Hogan. His sex tape, or whatever you want to call it, if your friend films you having sex with his wife, but it's not exactly clear if the recording was consensual, may bring down Gawker Media. One of the biggest reasons Hogan won was because of the blurring of lines between professional wrestler Hulk Hogan and an actual human being, Terry Bollea. Terry Bollea had to testify that Hulk Hogan, not Terry Bollea, had had a 10-inch penis during the same week that Donald Trump guaranteed the American people that he doesn't have small hands and that he's well endowed. It's impossible to draw the line between character and reality, and it's becoming impossible to draw the line between Donald Trump the businessman and Donald Trump the nominee for the Republican Party for president.
Politics is wrestling, but so is everything else. We have one last example. This month we lost the most important athlete of the 20th century, Muhammad Ali. Ali's taunts and persona were lifted from one of the biggest pro wrestlers ever, Gorgeous George. And later in his career, Ali wrestled legendary Japanese wrestler Antonio Inoki, which was the inspiration for the Thunder Lips Rocky match in Rocky III, a movie that helped introduce Hulk Hogan to the mainstream. And then 2 years after Rocky III, Hulk Hogan was headlining the first WrestleMania, and his match was guest refereed by Muhammad Ali. So I know we sound like conspiracy theorists when we do this, but it really is all connected.
Last weekend was awful. The horrible tragedy of Paulson, Orlando dominated the news cycle. Lives were lost, and the media did their job, shining a light on sadness. But not everything last weekend was sad. 2012 Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney participated in a wrestling match between boxer Oscar de la Hoya and whatever Mario Lopez considers himself.
Because even though Mitt Romney might say never Trump, he hasn't said never wrestling.